Right, now it's time to work on our camera and make our camera to follow our player and make our player to rotate correctly. And those topics are a little bit advanced, but no worries, I will explain you everything. Well, easiest way to make our camera to follow our player would be to just simply drag and drop our main camera into the player. So main camera is now child of the player. And if we, for example, press play right now, you will see that camera is following us. And well, it's not perfect because right now our player can't rotate, and also using this main camera as a uh, main camera point which will follow our player is really bad practice, and because it leads to a lot of complications, lots of weird rotational movements and so on. So it's not the best way, and we are not gonna use this main camera. But let me first talk about few things. Let's imagine that we have the camera inside our player, and let's say that we want to look up and down with our mouse. Well, first of all, it means that we want to get some information about our mouse. Well, after that, when we want to look up and down, what should happen? Well, let me go in the scene view and let me rotate this camera up and down. Well, what is happening here? Let's check. Yeah, when we want to look up and down, we are obviously uh, able to rotate this camera up and down, right? And it will work fine. But when we want to look around, for example, left and right, we will not be able to only move this camera left and right. Indeed, we should also consider the fact that in those cases, our player itself should rotate. So our player should rotate left and right. So for the left and right movement, so for the rotation, we want to rotate our player. But to look up and down, we should rotate only camera, because if we rotate player up and down, it doesn't make sense because our player will end up like this, something like this, and that's not exactly what we want. Also, when we rotate the up and down our camera, our x value is changing, uh, not y, our x instead. It's weird, I know, but this is how Unity works sometimes. And when we change the rotation on the x, as you see, y value is changing. So it's opposite way, our rotations. But the thing is that now we know that in order to rotate up and down, we want to rotate our camera itself, and in order to uh, look around and rotate our player, we want to change the rotation of the player itself. So what we will do, let's select the player. Well, we don't need to have rotations, so I will make it 0 0 0 for the rotation. I will also take this camera out of the player because we don't need it. Oh, let's leave it like this for now. I will just change rotations. Also, we don't need to have those ones. I was just showing you. Let's go in game view. Okay, the basic look. All right, now let's go in the player movement script and let's start working on it. Well, first of all, what we need. Let me just make the script bigger. All right, we will need to have some variables in order everything to actually work. And let's start working on them. So I will make some space here. And well, first variable will be to have for the camera point, and this camera point will be just empty game object, and we will place it just for the perfect position instead of the main camera, and we will use that point, and it will act like our camera point basically. And we can say public transform, and let's call this one player viewpoint. And we can comment everything out for you to easier understand. So you can tell that it represents player's viewpoint. So how our player views the world. Well, also we will need, since we will need to have some mouse inputs, to control our mouse inputs, we will need to have some kind of sensors, some kind of sensitivity. And for that, let's create some variable, public float, and let's call this one mouse sensitivity. Just like this. And we can make it by default something, but well, we will change it later in the Unity editor. Well, we also want to have some vertical rotation for the player's view. For that, we will create private float, and let's call this one vertical rotation. Vertical rotation, just like this. And also, well, we need to have some mouse input. And for mouse input, we only care about X and Y, so we can use vector 2 because it will be for the looking around. And we can say private float, no, not the float, sorry, vector 2. And let's call this one mouse input. All right. Well, we can also add few extra details such as inward tower looking. You probably have seen a lot of games in the settings have the option to inward look. What it means is that, for example, when we take our mouse up, we generally are looking at the upside and we are rotating upside. But if we select the inward look, when we take our mouse up, our player will look down. And well, some players like that, so let's include that as well. Public bool, and let's call this one inward look, just in case someone wants to include it into actual game. Also, we need to get reference to our main camera, so we can say private camera, and well, we can call it main cam, just like this, if we want, or let's call this one player camera. Player camera. Okay, that's all, I think. If we will need something, we will add later. And now let's start working. First of all, let's get reference to our main camera with an get component method. So in the start, we can say player camera, right? But well, actually, we don't want to use the get component because getting reference to the camera is easier. We can just say camera.main. And Unity will automatically know that we are referring to our main camera. All right. Now in update, first thing that we will do before these inputs and things like that, we will get our mouse input. And to do that, we can say mouse input equals a new vector 2, and new vector 2 takes two variables, two parameters, x and y. And for the x, we will get input about our mouse x. So if we go in edit, project settings, we have the inputs for the mouse x and mouse y. This is for mouse inputs. And let's go back. And here we can say input dot get axis raw, and in brackets and quotation marks we should say mouse x. Again, everything case sensitive, so type it correctly. And for the y, we can say input dot get axis raw, in brackets and quotation marks we can say mouse y, just like this. Now we have information about our mouse input, and we can multiply it to some sensitivity for the smooth movement and to control how sensitive will our mouse be, because it's very important. So we are multiplying it to some mouse sensor. Okay, now that we have our mouse input, next step will be to rotate the player horizontally based on this mouse input. And to do that, we can say transform.rotation. And well, this transform.rotation takes few parameters. It should be equal, not the brackets. It should be equal. Since we are working with rotations, rotations are controlled with quaternions, and we will use quaternion.Euler, not inverse, Euler. And basically these Eulers are transforming the degrees into the axis. So we can say, well, it also needs to have the x, y, and z, but we also should consider that, well, let's first do for the x, because for the x it will be just transform dot rotation dot Euler angles dot x, comma. Now for the y, what we should do? Well, we should say transform dot rotation dot Euler angles dot y, but we should add also mouse input here. We should consider mouse input here because, as I said, we should actually rotate our camera when we want to look up and look down. And for that, we will add here mouse input dot x. And well, for the z, we can simply say transform dot rotation dot Euler angles dot z, and don't forget to have semicolon at the end. So that's pretty much it. I will show you one more time this line. We are just getting rotation for the x and for the z regular way with the help of Euler angles, and for the y we are using this mouse inputs x position. Well, now that we have our rotation horizontally, the next thing will be to add some vertical mouse input to vertical rotation, right? Because we also need some vertical rotational movements. And well, it will be simple. We just need to say vertical input, not the input, vertical rotation equals, well, let's make plus equals, since we already know what is this plus equals. Mouse inputs, and this time we will use y, obviously. And well, plus equals, I will remind you, we are just taking vertical rotation and we are adding some mouse inputs dot y. All right, we have added some vertical rotations as well. Well, also we should consider the fact that, yeah, we can look up and down with our mouse, but we don't want to look 360 degrees up or 360 degrees down, right? We want to limit our how we look our game, how far we can look up or how far we can look down. And that's how games are made in general. They all have some limitations. And well, to have some limits, we can say vertical rotation equals, and we can use some mathf.clamp, and this clamping allows us to limit some rotation between two numbers. First of all, let's say what we are doing. We are clamping vertical rotation, comma, and now we can say some limit numbers. I think 60 in general works fine in most of the games, so we will start for 60 and 60. This is minimum and maximum. It also means that minus 60 will be for looking down and 60 will be for looking up. Okay, we successfully clamped it. Next thing, what to do? Well, we can also use this invert look, as I said, to have some option for the players to invert some view point rotations. And to do that, we can say simple logic here that if invert look, so if invert look is activated, what do we want to do? Well, player view point dot rotation should be equal to, again, we will use quaternion dot Euler since we are doing some rotations. We will pass our vertical rotation because we are working with vertical rotation for the invert look. After that, we can basically pass y and z simply. So to do that, now we can say player viewpoint dot Euler angles dot y, and same for the z, player viewpoint dot Euler angles dot z. And that's pretty much it. We are just taking vertical rotation for the x. Well, we should also say else, because if this inward look is not activated, we can basically copy this line of code, and we only need to change one thing. Vertical rotation will have minus in front. So if we activate this inward look, we can use this later if you will have some options, settings, and so on in the menus. And if the players will activate inward look, they will have some option to have some inward look on the mouse. But if this inward look will not be activated, well, we will have just default standard rotational movement. All right. Well, I think that's what else to add here. Well, we added the rotations successfully. Yeah, let's save first of all this script, and let's see how it works and what it does in general. So Control and S or Command and S. Well, we should make one more point before I forgot. Outside of the update, so outside of this big update function, and by the way, to find the closing bracket of the update, if you have difficulties find it, you just need to select the opening one of the update, and this one will automatically show. So outside of the update, we can create one private void late update function, and late update runs out after our update, and it's very good to be used with our player camera mechanics, for example. And basically we should say that our player camera dot transform dot position should be equal to our player's viewpoint, because we want to use that empty game object for the viewpoint. So player viewpoint dot position, and we should also do same for the rotation. Player camera dot transform dot rotation should be equal to player viewpoint dot rotation. Just like this, quite big script. And let's save this script. Let's go back and let's test how everything works. We should do few things. First of all, we need to create our player's viewpoint, and to do that, what we can do, we can basically create a viewpoint in the player. Right click, create empty, and let's call this one player viewpoint. And the thing is that now we should place our camera how we like it to be placed. For example, like so. We can also rotate it a bit. It's really up to you how you want your game to look like. For example, like this. Now, thing is that this main camera and player viewpoint now should have same kind of positions and rotations. And for that, we'll select after we adjust our main camera. So how we want to look, how our game to look, so our camera to be. After that, we will just select the main camera. We will select 3 dots, and we will say copy component. And in the player viewpoint, let's hit 3 dots and paste component values. And now those two are positioned exactly same. They have same rotations, and we'll just drag main camera outside the player, because we don't want main camera to be part of the player, as I said, to avoid all of the complications. Instead, we're gonna use this player viewpoint. Now let's select the player. Let's scroll down. We need to add player viewpoint here. So let's add player viewpoint. And well, we also need to have some kind of mouse sensitivity. Let's make it 1. And you see we have option of inward look. I will not activate it by default, so it will be deactivated in my case. But if you are used to it, to inward looks, you can activate this. Anyway, let's now press play and let's check how everything is working. And yeah, indeed we have the player camera. We can rotate our camera. Only thing that is a little bit of problem is that we have our mouse on the screen, which is not like good, and it basically we should basically work on it. We will fix that in the next video, but for now everything seems to be working.